Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Aussie writers and other creatives.
Hello, and I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well, and Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, ideas, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business.
Hi Lynn, how are you this week?
Well, it's been a good week for me, Rach. Lots of work and quite a few long walks. I'm doing lots of walking. That's keeping my sanity up. What about you?
I haven't done any long walks actually, but I probably should. It's either work and homeschooling or that calms down and I can actually go out and have a walk. But yeah, no, I need to do more of that to keep me sane. Yeah, and just see a bit more of the beach, which brings me to this week's guest, Sara Mulcahy, who's a freelancer that we both know, and she is living on the beach or near the water, because she's moved from Sydney up to Far North Queensland, which is quite a story. And I'm looking forward to hearing all about this and how it's affected her freelancing career.
I agree. I am friends with Sara on Facebook and I see a lot about her journey up there. I'd love to hear about it, like figuratively and literally, because it's been quite a change. Sara Mulcahy started her career in wordsmithing on teen magazines. Oh, I feel you there. I did too. And she was in London in the 1990s and she worked as an editor at News Limited in Sydney for 10 years before leaving with a decent payout and a boot print on her bum in 2012.
I think you're not alone there. Probably a lot of
a few of us, yeah. So since then, she's combined an eclectic freelance writing career with being a single mum to two young kids. And in a bid to do something different while sick kids were young enough to enjoy it, she moved the family up to Port Douglas in March 2020, which turned out to be rather excellent timing. Sara, welcome.
Welcome to The Content Bite.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Oh, fantastic.
It's great to see you. I see you a lot, obviously, in the Gold Group and elsewhere, mainly on Facebook, actually. And, you know, we used to sort of be neighbours because I think you were a Surrey Hillsian.
I will be again someday, yes.
Someday. Oh, so there's a hint that you might come home. That was going to be one of our questions. Well, tell us, I mean, your life's changed so much in the past year, and obviously, like, is it the worst or the best time to move to up sticks and move during a pandemic? I don't know.
Well, look, the timing was certainly interesting. I mean, I'd been planning a move for probably about 18 months. Well, when I say planning, I mean just kind of thinking about it. We were originally going to go to Bali, actually, but I spoke to a few people who'd done it and it just sort of got put in the too hard basket. So we decided to come up to Port Douglas instead, where we'd been on holiday a few times. Thank God we did, really, because as it turned out, we wouldn't have been able to go to Bali because we were due to leave on the 21st of March. And I remember it was just that week I was talking to a neighbour in the street and I said, I feel very anxious about this because our house had been rented out. We'd put our stuff into storage. We were packed, we were ready to go. And I said, I just feel like they might shut the borders. And we laughed, about how preposterous the idea of that was.
Yes.
By the Friday morning, literally 24 hours before we were due to leave, I said, right, come on, we're just going to go because I was really panicking. And we basically drove up, stayed a couple of places on the way. We got to Byron and the border was closing at midnight that night. So we went over, not with 5 minutes to spare, but probably with about 8 hours to spare. And then we just sort of carried on driving and got up to Port Douglas. So yeah, it was quite exciting for the kids, really. Things were slamming shut as we got further north. By the time we got up to Far North Queensland, the last stop before we came to our house, it was actually very difficult to find anywhere to stay. So yes, the timing was strange, but it was very good timing in that respect, because up here, as you probably know, we've been relatively untouched by all the horribleness of lockdowns and homeschooling and all the other things you guys are going through.
Talk us through the logistics of packing your house up, finding someone to rent it, finding a house up there that you were happy, that you knew you'd be happy to live in. Was all of that just overwhelming or was it quite easy?
It wasn't really, to be honest, because the only things you really have to do, I had to worry about, was getting the kids into a school and finding somewhere to live. And that was it, really. And, you just, it's like anything else, make a list, started ticking things off. We rented the house out furnished, and we've rented here furnished, which I think made things a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
We just left with the car and the dog and ourselves and our bag.
Yeah.
It's quite a brave move, really. Are you pleased you did it? And what surprised you about the change?
Look, it's really interesting that you use the word brave, because I was talking to somebody else recently who's moved her family down to Tasmania. She said, that's what people keep saying to me as well. Brave, so brave. And I think actually it's not brave at all. I mean, it's, you've got quite a lot of stuff to sort out, but it's actually not that hard. And I think making the decision to do it is probably the difficult part, the brave part, if you like. And I guess then, of course, the main stumbling block for a lot of people is being able to find work, which is where being a freelancer is such a wonderful and glorious thing, because it's so portable, and that's basically what's enabled us to be able to do it, because jobs up here obviously are few and far between.
Yeah,
I know that was something when Lynn and I were talking about getting you on, that was something that we did discuss, that remote working and freelancing and having that portable sort of freelance career has become so much more acceptable, and it's become so much easier for a lot of us to just pick up and go.
Yeah.
You're not so much being the nomad on the beach with the laptop, but just what you're doing. I think perhaps you wouldn't have contemplated doing it, a few years ago, but now it seems much easier.
Yeah, it is. And it's certainly probably got easier since I got here, because as you know, I mean, most of the people I do work for are based in Sydney and Melbourne, and they're all working from home anyway. And to be honest, most people don't ask where I am. Why?
Yeah.
And if they do, if they know I'm in Queensland, they assume I'm in Brisbane, if there's time difference, what depending on the time of year. And then if anybody does actually say, oh, where are you? And I tell them, the only thing they ever say is, oh, you're so lucky, or I went on holiday once, or, so nobody cares. And I think, that's probably got easier, but I think it was always going to be doable.
Do you think it's easier because you already had an established freelance business in places like Sydney and Melbourne that maybe started with some personal connection?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And I think, because I lived in the States for a year or so once, and what I found there, which is what maybe I would find here, I don't know, is that the longer you're away, the harder it gets, because obviously your contacts do move on, and it's more difficult to make new ones, I guess, when you're doing it remotely. So far, I would say, look, I did my tax return last week. I've been putting it off for weeks now. I'm usually very good. I actually realized that I'd made a small amount more money than I have done for the last 10 years.
Wow.
And I think there have been quite a few extra opportunities that I wouldn't have had. I've had people coming to me for travel content because, they want somebody who's on the ground up in Far North Queensland. So I've been doing some stuff for Qantas and Escape that I probably wouldn't have done otherwise. And I've picked up a bit of local work as well for a couple of resorts here. And then I've got sort of ongoing more corporate stuff, which I've been doing. So a really nice mix. But I think actually moving here has probably given my freelance repertoire a bit of a boost, if anything.
Oh, that's interesting.
Were you expecting that you would sort of be knocking on doors up there to try and find clients? Or were you thinking I'll just keep my clients from Sydney and do that?
Yeah, I think I just had my fingers in my ears and I was going, la, la, la. I don't think I really had a plan, to be honest.
Yeah.
Things just, I think when you're a freelancer, it's the same here as it is anywhere else. It's a bit of feast and famine. There's been times when I've thought, oh my God, I've got no work. And then times when I've got too much. And I do feel being a freelancer, if you've been doing it for a few years, something always turns up, really, doesn't it? You really need something. Yeah.
I always think that too. Like my parents were saying to me, so what's on for next week? And I am actually working on a website for someone, but I don't have any, for the first time in ages, I don't have any features due. I've got no content marketing due. I'm just doing this website for someone. I thought, oh, that's kind of a weird feeling, not having anything. And then there's nothing for the week after. And they're like, aren't you stressed? And I went, not really. Something always turns up.
Yeah, and it does.
It does. It's surprising, isn't it? How long have you been freelancing for? 10 years, is it?
10 years. I left news in 2012. So I've done a couple of in-house stints during that time, but mostly I've just been freelancing. Yeah.
So that probably gives you that confidence and connections, or maybe you get less stressed. And I guess working in somewhere like a sort of a regional place is a bit cheaper too, or living there, is it?
It is. It is. It's heaps. I mean, the rent here, you know, we have this fabulous house looking out over a lake with a pool, and, you know, it's just glorious. And I'm paying a lot less for this than I am renting out my Sydney terrace. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the cost of living is lower. And also because I'm now renting something, you know, I've got all these deductions, which I didn't have when I was living in my own house.
Yeah. Oh, that's a bonus. Of course. You didn't even think of that. Yeah.
And what was your plan when you initially said, I'm going to do this? Like, was it going to be a year or 2 years, or you just left it open?
It was going to be a year. It's probably going to be more like 2, but the plan at the moment is to come back early next year. We'll just keep an eye on the situation, I guess, but I think that will probably be what we do. And what's behind that is not a desire to get out of here particularly, but my oldest is starting high school.
Yeah.
So that was always going to be the shall we, shan't we? And I think we will come back to Sydney for him to go to high school, in February.
And how much have the kids sort of driven those decisions or had a say in it at all? Like, has it been something you've all discussed together? Or
Yeah, absolutely. There's just the 3 of us, me and the 2 kids, and I'm in charge, obviously, but
generally,
I
wish I could say that.
But you know, it's very much been a sort of group decision. I mean, look, if Rafi wasn't starting high school, I think we would probably stay another year. And I think Peggy would probably like to stay another year because, you know, she's funny. We haven't been away 2 years yet, and already, because she's 7, she can barely remember anything about Sydney. You know, it's all just a blur. So she's very happy here, but, you know, she's pretty robust. She doesn't change.
And how much have you created new networks up there or tried to? Has it been difficult to do that? Has it been something you've actively thought about doing or wanted to do in order to find new clients or even new friends?
Well, there's been a lot of sort of networking school-wise to make new friends. We've met some, you know, made some good friends up here actually who I'll miss when we return. Work-wise, there's just been a couple of things, to be honest, that have fallen into my lap, I guess, locally. You know, I've sort of put feelers out to different areas that I might not have done before, but I haven't really had to do the sort of hard sell. It's just been quite organic, I guess.
Yeah. That is one of the advantages of having children, isn't it? You do make sort of informal networks through schools and their activities.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, if it wasn't for them, I'd be sitting here at Billy No Mates.
I always think about that though, like moving to the Northern Beaches where I am currently in lockdown at my parents' from Newtown and having to start that whole process again. And I actually find the idea quite daunting, like leaving my nice, comfy little network and all the parents that I know and Charlie's friends and all of that. I find it quite overwhelming, the thought of it, you know?
Yeah, it is. But you meet new people. The thing with Port Douglas as well is there's a fairly transient population. There are a lot of people doing what we're doing, particularly at the moment. You can imagine people have come up on holiday and just decided not to go back. So there's always new people around, and, you know, you're not the new person for very long. Suddenly, you know, I'm one of the kind of person who's doling out advice to new arrivals, and I've only been here 5 minutes myself.
Yeah.
Oh, that is interesting. That's probably quite different. So then if you sort of went to a large sort of rural centre or something where everyone's been there for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, maybe that might be a bit harder to get in. But you're right. I mean, with kids at primary school, you just meet people all the time. Yeah.
What do you miss about the city? Because you were so in the midst of Surrey Hills and that whole buzz and everything. And what do you think you'll miss about Port Douglas when you do leave?
Look, I loved our life in Surrey Hills, and I have no sort of regrets about going back there. I'm not thinking, oh, God, I don't want to go back there or anything, because I really do. There are things about it I miss, friends, neighbours, just the sort of general routine, you know, shops, bars, things like that, you know, all the stuff you might miss. I don't miss city life as such. I mean, Port Douglas, it's not, you know, it's not a metropolis, but it's not sort of tumbleweed rolling down the streets or anything. There's a nice little town centre, there's supermarkets, there's all the normal stuff.
Yeah.
I guess what I will miss about being up here is probably all the stuff we do, after school and on the weekends. And it's actually made me think that when we do come back to New South Wales, I'm going to make much more of an effort to do more stuff, get out, see more things, go camping as we do here, because of course there's all that stuff down there as well. And it's kind of given me the incentive to do more when we get back, I think. So that'll be nice, do a bit more exploring of my own backyard.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll all be doing that for the next year, won't we?
I think we will.
Maybe we'll never be leaving Australia again.
Can I just ask you a little bit about your business? So how much is classic journalism? How much is corporate content? And has that changed over the years?
I suppose it has probably changed over the years. Yeah, I mean, when I started freelancing, I was just doing writing for magazines. I do still do quite a bit of that. But then I've got sort of corporate clients that I do website content for. And look, I do a lot of work through Dulux at the moment for their brands, and there's a lot of writing product descriptions for Bunnings, and it's actually not quite as boring as it sounds, but it's a good mix, because there's that, and then I do have more creative things. Like I just went down to Fitzroy Island on a famil with the kids for 3 days, which was lovely. And I'm doing quite a lot of wine writing as well. So that's becoming more of a niche for me. So that's obviously interesting. Wine and travel, because they are two of my favourite tax deductions.
Fair enough.
Love it.
Yeah. So
you're living the life, aren't you? Wine, travel, living in Port Douglas.
yeah, that's right.
And is it still, are you getting most of your new clients word of mouth, or some you said you've found up there? And
yeah, just a couple. It is word of mouth. Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing leads to another. That's how.
Yeah, I think that's been a familiar pattern with long-term freelancers that we've chatted to, and probably same with Rachel and I. Once you start that network, it does sort of reach out from there. So you start with somebody, they move to somewhere else, you pick them up, and then the original client and somebody talks to somebody. Yeah,
exactly, which is great.
I think the only downside to, say, moving your life somewhere like you've done, because we wrote about this on Rachel's list, and it was about, if someone does move on to a new publishing house or a digital agency or something, and you might want to go and take them out for a coffee and say, take me with you, or give them some ideas. It isn't as easy. So you can be forgotten, I suppose, in that you have to be much more proactive about keeping in touch with that person, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. Although especially at the moment, there's not much going out for coffee going on, is there? So
yeah, that's true.
No other people sneaking in, taking people out for coffee and moving in on my contacts.
You can tell that I'm completely stuck in the past of how it used to be instead of the Armageddon that we're all living in.
I just think are you wondering if you just got this secret smugness about you? Look, how good are you choosing this to move at this stage, missing a pandemic?
She was very lucky, wasn't she?
She was.
Very well planned, Rach. That's what it was. No, it was
and then she puts all her pictures on Facebook. I mean, what are we supposed to do with that?
Kids in the pool.
No, it has been very nice watching your adventure, I have to say. I have some slight envy.
So one thing we love to ask guests on the show, if they have any favourite apps or tools or anything they'd be lost without, things that you might find that really contributes to your productivity. Is there anything clever that you've discovered?
And I think you're just trying to make me look old, aren't you? No, look, I don't use any of the accounting apps because I have a fantastic accountant. Shout out to Claire Willows.
She's mine too.
I know. Is she a tool? I don't think she probably doesn't think so. But I don't know. I don't. I tend to use, obviously, whatever my clients are using. I do a lot of work for Medium Rare, and they use Rike, which I find very efficient. I was using Trello on a project recently, and to be honest, I thought it was a colossal waste of time. But I imagine maybe on a more complex project it would have been useful. Actually, it just added to the workload, I felt. Look, the Rachel's List Gold Group is probably where I would go for most of it. I mean, it is terrific. I'm not just saying that because you're sitting in front of me, Rach.
Oh, that's good.
Because people are so kind and so willing to share contacts and experiences and case studies, and I use that probably more than I should, and I do find that incredibly useful. But no, I don't have any clever tips.
But maybe that's a good thing, because sometimes people get intimidated that you have to know all the whiz bang things, and basically you're telling us you're probably just using
you manage without anything.
That's right.
And if anybody says, do you use something, I just say, oh yes, and then you just go off and Google it, and it's usually fine,
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
look, you've done so many varied jobs and have had so many amazing roles through your career, and I know our paths have crossed a few times, on a work basis as well. What would be your advice to journalists who may be floundering a bit or thinking, I have to branch out and I don't really know how, or how do I even start?
That's a hard one, because I think, as we were saying before, it probably does all come down to your contacts, especially when things are a bit thin on the ground. Look, I don't know. I wish I had an answer to that, to be honest, because if I did, I'd go into consultancy and make myself a lot of money. But yeah, I guess, yes, it does. That old, it's not what you know, it's who you know, probably does come into it an awful lot. So I guess that's my thing. I'm always extremely grateful for work, and I always say thank you for commissioning me. And you get the emails saying, oh, this brief's actually changed, and I think, oh, God's sake, and then I say no problem. So I try, I guess, and make myself the person who they can think, oh, Sarah's really nice because she never complains about anything. Not to my face anyway. And also I do, can you do this by Friday? And I always say, yeah, no problem. And I just kind of try to make things work.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that contributes to my sort of supposed success or not, but I like to think it does. Yeah.
I think it does. I think that people just want to work with nice people who, are reliable, basically.
With no dramas.
The more that you give editors or clients that, the more they come back to you, because you're not ghosting them. You're always meeting deadlines. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Sara. It's so lovely to have you on there. I can see it looks so hot out there. It's quite...
We are on video right now, just for everyone who's listening to our audio.
We can see how nice and hot. Well, Rach and I are freezing down here. So it's so lovely to have you on the show. And I think it's really encouraging, because one of the dreams about freelance life is that you can move to wherever you want and still have a viable career. And I think that you've sort of proven that can be done. It's really lovely.
Yeah, and I would say to anybody who is teetering about whether to do it or not, just do it. Give yourself a shove and do it, especially if you've got young children, or you wanted to write a book or something. Just do it. That's the hard bit. What are you going to do? If it all goes wrong, you can always go home.
Fantastic. Well, if there are any amazing clients on here wanting to hire you, where can people track you down?
Just the usual places, right? I have no website, but I'm, on Facebook and all that stuff, and of course through the Gold Group. You can always catch me there. Always hanging around there.
Fantastic.
Great. Oh, well, thanks for coming on and sharing your adventure with us. We will be looking forward to some more beautiful shots from your camping trips and possibly your trips to the islands and all the other places that you're allowed to go currently that we are not.
I will.
Enjoy. Okay, thanks, Sara.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
Thank
Bye.
you.